Today, we're looking at an orange ink by Pilot Iroshizuku Yu, or Sunset. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. If you'd like to look at other orange inks, then there's a link to that playlist down in the description. Hi, I'm an ink guy. Now, to standardize some of the writing samples, the first three are always done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Let's take a look at that first one, 90 GSM Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. Though 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, it does shade fairly well. Take a look at Yu, where it starts darker, gets lighter. At Yaku goes from a mid-tone to a lighter to a very dark tone. Extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading that's going on. Quick goes from darker to lighter to darker to lighter to darker. Brown goes from dark to light. Very nice. 4 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading. Brown goes from dark to light. Fox goes from mid to light to dark. 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation, and we definitely get it. And a smear test, you could likely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with this Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, this X450 with a medium nib, and this X750 with an extra fine. Then a Diplomat Arrow with a broad nib was inked up, used for day, and used to take the notes for this video. Now, let's take a look at the second standard paper, 52 GSM, Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 8 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, very little shading, a couple darker spots that occur like the K in quick or S in jumps, 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show some color variation, though we're not really getting much here. And a smear test, though, you could probably recover it if you smeared this while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And really closely looking, you see that there is a yellow at the bottom that's largely staying in place while the orange is pushing its way very much up. And it looks like there's a tiny bit of red gathering across the top. Now the one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's dunked in the water. And if that filter paper was not marked, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between these two, which really means I'm not expecting any kind of resistance from this ink. The third standard paper is 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading like the L in Pilot's a bit darker, the I in Iroshizuku, the KE in Yake. So there is some shading in the stub. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some moments of shading. Brown starts a little darker, gets lighter. Fox goes dark to light to dark. Quick, the K is darker than the rest of the word. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, it shades a whole lot better, which is the reason as a majority it looks darker. But I said it's the same tone because it's shading so much more. Quick goes from dark to light to dark. Brown goes dark to light. Fox goes dark to light to dark. Very nice in what's happening here. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show plenty of color variation, although I think it looked much better in the medium. And a smear test says you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. This smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it's holding up, but it's really getting very fuzzy and kind of bleeding together some. I probably wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation if I had to go back and highlight though. Now water's reactivating and lifting all the darkest tones, but leaving this kind of peach tone still there. Pen flush is breaking it down a bit more than the water did, but not removing all of that ink. And the 1/3 bleach solution is completely obliterating it from the page. Now, with that being said, it only took water for me to get this out of my pen. Additional writing samples are done on paper that changes from video to video in order to really expand some of that experience with inks and papers. This next paper is a composition lab notebook. The only bleed spot that's occurring is here at the scrubby. Otherwise, we have no bleeding, no ghosting. This bleed spot doesn't concern me because we're putting the ink on stupid thick here. Now the medium is performing fairly well. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have some shading. If you look at the Iro, where I shortened up Iroshizuku, compared to the Yu is much lighter than the Iro. So there is some shading that's available there. Now the extra fine is the same tone as that medium with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade. Look at how brown goes a little darker to a little lighter. Over goes from a bit lighter to a bit darker. 1 second to dry. Now the scrubby far left to far right, you do see some tone variation, and there is some in the writing. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Iroshizuku's Yu has a viscosity of 1.38, making this a little bit wetter than normal. The next writing sample is done in a mead notebook. The only bleed spot that's occurring here is at the scrubby, which is not concerning to me at all. There's otherwise no bleeding and there's no ghosting. So this ink is doing incredibly well on the inexpensive or cheaply made papers. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation, which we didn't get. In the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. As long as we've been looking at cheaply made papers, the last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper, a crowd favorite. It certainly bleeds quite a bit. It's really, you can see everywhere that there was writing underneath. Now there was no bleed through that touched the page underneath, only made the back of this paper unusable for writing on, because if you write on both sides, you're likely to lose both sides worth of notes. The medium has feathering all over it, but not the type of feathering that would stop most people to use it. It does spread to about a broad. It has no halo sheen or shade. The extra fine moved up to about a fine with no feather, or sorry, with minor feathering, incredibly minor feathering. Look at the W to N. Look at the X in Fox, the S in Jumps. Minor feathering all over, not what would stop people from using it. Minor spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation, and there isn't any. In the smear test, there is no smear. It dries that fast. Instead of finding inks that look like Iroshizuku's Yu, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a black ink so that I took no attention away from this. Caran Cosmic Black. So what do I think of Iroshizuku's Yu? This is a great tone with great shading that just might have to add a bottle into my collection. This performed so well on cheap paper, I was in complete shock. That's why I just showed the cheaper papers opposed to all of the writing samples that are done. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? I don't think you could use a nib or pen that would make this ink not look good. It's really dealer's choice. In fact, the only thing that makes this ink not look good is when I write with it, because my writing is horrible. I hope you got something out of this video, and tomorrow we're going to take a look at Lamy Green.